Hello, everyone. I'm Kenney Potter, and I am school and concert choral editor for ECS Publishing Group. And with us today is Kyle Pederson. Kyle, welcome. Glad you're with us.
Thank you, Kenny. Always good to chat with you.
So we have a number of titles that is in our catalog that you have written, and I just want to say I'm a big fan of your compositional style and in your ingenuity in your compositional process. And that was even before I started with ECS. So great work. You have written an extended work and it's called A Vision Unfolding. Can you talk a little bit about that work?
Yeah, in a nutshell, my elevator pitch for it. It's a 5 movement genre bending work for SATB Chorus. Comes in at just under 30 minutes. It's broadly based around themes of social justice. And the work incorporates spoken word throughout as a narrative thread. And it has musical texts by Langston Hughes, Walt Whitman, contemporary poets Robert Bodie and Chanel Gabriel. I even wrote one of the texts also. And we cast a vision for how we might live better in community where justice and freedom, inclusivity are central. Instrumentation for this work includes piano, but it can really get spiced up if you include the optional snare drum for a couple of the movements, and also the optional violin and trumpet.
And one of the movements is beat beat drums. So obviously the snare drum
Indeed.
adds to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps. It really helps to have the snare drum with that sort of incessant rhythm propelling it forward. And with the bugles blow, it helps to have the blow of the trumpet on that one as well.
Yeah, awesome. These are great works, and it's a great work overall, but even individually, and they are going to be offered individually as well. But I hope folks will look at it as a whole unit. Tell us about the inspiration of and the background to this work.
Yeah, happy to. So Dr. Kevin Fenton, incredible director down at Florida State University, reached out a couple of years ago. He had done a couple of my earlier pieces, and he asked if I'd be interested in writing an extended work exploring themes of social justice. And he shared some texts with me that really resonated with him. And I was all in from the get-go. I loved the texts that he had proposed. I really looked forward to the challenge of writing my first extended work. And he was gracious enough to volunteer to reach out to connect with his choral colleagues across the country to line up a consortium to commission the work. So I dove in, and I knew early on that I wanted 5 movements or pieces that could stand alone if a director needed something shorter than 30 minutes. And I also love the idea of spoken word poetry threading these pieces together. So I went to create what I hoped would be an inviting, accessible work that speaks into some of the contemporary issues that our communities are facing.
And the commissioning consortium is made up of what levels of choirs?
There were 6 college choirs across the country, 1 community choir that includes a high school choir with that as well. The work is intended to be accessible for a solid high school program on up through community choirs, professional choirs, college choirs, both the entire work and individual pieces within as well.
And as a former middle school and high school teacher, I will contend that this is absolutely doable by solid high school programs.
Yeah,
So,
awesome.
okay, so 30-minute musical work, and yet you do some creative work within it with spoken word. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as I was contemplating a piece with social justice themes, I didn't want to craft something from just my own perspective. I loved the idea with collaborating with somebody else who could also bring another perspective. So I reached out to a colleague of mine, Chanel Gabriel. And Chanel is an African-American singer, songwriter, poet, spoken word artist, performer, educator extraordinaire. And I asked her if she'd be willing to collaborate in crafting spoken word prologues that would frame up each piece to really provide the audience and the choir some handles into the pieces. And I found that the spoken word really is a great vehicle to weave common threads throughout the work. And we loved it so much that we actually embedded some spoken word in one of the choral pieces, movement 4, Light Transforms the Darkness. At the end of that piece, as it builds to its conclusion, we actually structure it so that each vocal part has a chance to join their voices together and speak. And I think the immediacy, the presence, and sort of that visceral nature of the spoken word art form really aligns well with the message of the piece.
Excellent. And so here's your opportunity to really pitch this work. What makes it unique? Why, if I'm a choral director, which I am, why do I want to program this piece?
Hmm. Well, let's see. How long do we have, Kenney? I'll try to truncate my thoughts. I think the spoken word element is really unique, but as is the flexibility that directors have to create their own prologues and narration. If they have poetry that resonates with them, speech excerpts that resonate with them or their choir members, I encourage them to swap out existing prologues or modify existing prologues so that it can really resonate with their situation. So there's flexibility there. I think the instrumentation is interesting and unique. You don't often have snare drum and trumpet with choral music, so I think that provides an added cool optional element. And I love the fact that there's so many different styles of music. There's a piece that has a gospel music influence, one that's inspired by the blues, one with elements of a pop ballad. There's one that's mixed meter and incessant and driving forward. So I really much wanted an eclectic, sort of diverse sounding bunch of musical pieces and styles, because I think that illustrates the themes present in the work. And I really think it makes for an engaging experience for the choir and the audience. Maybe just a couple other things that strike me for uniqueness. Each piece can stand alone, but it can be programmed with two pieces, 3, 4. So if a director doesn't have 30 minutes, totally fine. You can easily structure a meaningful, impactful experience, much less than that. Maybe I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, and you said something. So, when I program, I try to be eclectic in my programming to help an audience stay engaged. And yet, it's great that if there is a unifying theme. So, what's the glue that holds this together?
Well, certainly the overarching theme of social justice and a way of living better in community, that sort of pervades all of the pieces. And that idea of finding some glue that holds this extended work together was forefront for me from the get-go, because I knew there was a very real danger that things could just kind of fly off the rails and seem as 5 separate pieces. So the spoken word really does provide a nice narrative arc and a structure to the piece with a beginning, middle, and end, kind of a satisfying structure for the audience to experience. And then the underscoring. So the music that I created underneath those prologues, I really had fun doing that because I had the chance to introduce motives that wouldn't be sung until later in the piece. And then I had a chance later in the piece to remind the audience and the listener of motives that I had introduced earlier. And so I think that there's this sense that all of these strands sort of are woven together and connect. And at the end, lots of these motives come together. All the instruments, 2 or 3 different musical motives that the audience will have heard earlier as it builds to this thunderous conclusion.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love that. Okay, so you know how things shift in our society, and social justice has become a hot button topic, especially we see in libraries and what's being allowed in school libraries and what's not. And so, what if I am a choral director who lives in an area whose red flags come up whenever you mention social justice? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. So one of my great concerns in general, music and beyond, is how much disdain and contempt we see between different sides of the political aisle. And I wanted to speak into that, not wanting to aggravate those tensions, and not in any way wanting this to be about left versus right or conservative versus liberal, but wanted to be intentional about being inviting, so that everybody felt like they could enter into this experience. And so one lyric in particular, I think, exemplifies this. So I crafted the lyrics to the 3rd movement, which is called All of Me. And one of my lyrics is this. It says, "Look at my vote. On that alone, are you likely to show contempt for me? Turn off the talk on the air and the voices that seem to just care about dividing and hiding us where we won't see." So the hope is that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican listening to this work, you will say, yes, I don't want to be treated with disdain based on who I voted for. And I will lean into that challenge and that invitation to treat those across the political aisle with respect and dignity. Now, saying that, there are certainly lots of different conceptions about what justice looks and feels and sounds like and how best to advocate for justice. So I think this work actually provides a really good jumping off point for conversation and for dialogue with choir members and even audience members. And I would remind directors that if they think that something won't resonate, if there's something in the spoken word that they think, I'm not sure if that's going to land with my particular audience, Again, they are welcome to craft their own prologue or modify the prologues in the spoken word to make sure that they are saying something that they know will resonate and that can be inviting everybody into this conversation.
Listen, I am going to just speak on behalf of this piece. I have been living with this piece for a while now through the editing process and the production. And I will say it's absolutely a winner. And we're looking forward to representing this piece and getting this piece out. It has a lot to say, both from a social justice perspective, but also musically. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, thank you so much for this time. We'll look forward to talking with you again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Kenney.
Okay.